7 Paths from Buddhism to Live Without Worry. In a world brimming with deadlines, social expectations, financial pressures, and an endless barrage of stimulation, worry has become a constant companion for many. Anxiety has woven itself into the fabric of modern life, leaving countless individuals searching for relief, for peace, for something deeper and more enduring than temporary distractions or surface-level solutions. But thousands of years ago, amidst the forests and silent meditations of ancient India, a spiritual path emerged that offered not just temporary relief, but true liberation from suffering. That path is Buddhism. The teachings of the Buddha are not about blind belief or mysticism detached from daily life. They are practical, grounded, and deeply psychological instructions for living in harmony with the truth of our existence. The essence of these teachings can be distilled into a way of life that untangles the roots of worry, fear, and restlessness. Buddhism doesn't promise a life free of challenges, but it shows us how to walk through fire without being consumed by it. This journey is not about escape, it's about transformation. It's not about rejecting the world, but rather seeing it clearly and stepping into it with awareness, compassion, and inner steadiness. The Buddha taught that the root of suffering lies in our ignorance, our attachments, and our aversion. Through mindful practice, deep insight, and moral clarity, one can awaken to a state of profound peace that is not dependent on external circumstances. In this profound exploration, we will walk through 5 foundational Buddhist paths that lead us out of the cycle of anxiety and into a life of deep presence and peace. Each path will reveal layers of understanding and practical applications to integrate into your life, no matter your background or belief system. This is not theory. It is a manual for freedom. Let us now begin with the first path, the path of understanding the nature of the mind. The path of understanding the nature of the mind. To live without worry, we must first understand where worry lives, within the mind. The first great truth in Buddhist teaching is that suffering arises from our own mental patterns, not from the world, not from people, not even from loss or uncertainty. All suffering is born in the mind and resolved in the mind. Therefore, the first and most essential path is to deeply understand how the mind functions. The Buddha did not speak about the mind in the abstract. He encouraged direct observation. Through mindfulness, sati, we are invited to look within, to see clearly the stream of thoughts, emotions, and sensations that arise moment by moment. This isn't about control, it's about clarity. As we observe the mind, we begin to notice a crucial insight. Most of our suffering is not caused by what happens, but by the stories we tell ourselves about what happens. For example, imagine losing your job. One person may interpret this as a failure, a catastrophe, and spiral into anxiety. Another may see it as an opportunity for growth or redirection. The same event, different mental interpretation. Buddhism teaches that our mental fabrications, our concepts, judgments, expectations, are what trap us. The mind constantly projects into the future, clings to the past, and resists the present. This is the mechanism of worry. Understanding this, we are encouraged to sit and watch the mind without judgment. Through meditation, we begin to disidentify from thought. We realize we are not our thoughts, we are the awareness in which they arise. This simple shift from being inside the thought to observing it breaks the illusion of control that worry thrives on. The Buddha taught the practice of vipassana, or insight meditation, which focuses on observing reality as it is. In this practice, you sit quietly, allowing the breath to anchor your attention, and simply notice everything that arises in the mind, pleasant or unpleasant, without grasping or pushing it away. Over time, you begin to see patterns. You notice the mind's habit of rehearsing potential disasters, of repeating conversations, of creating what-if scenarios. You also begin to see that these mental loops are not helpful. They are attempts to control the uncontrollable. Once you truly understand that the mind cannot solve what is beyond its reach, you begin to release your addiction to thinking. You no longer treat worry as a useful tool, but as a fire that feeds itself. From this place of seeing, calm arises. You can face your responsibilities with clarity, without the fog of mental agitation. A deeper layer of this path involves seeing through the illusion of the separate self. In Buddhist psychology, the idea of a permanent fixed self is considered a delusion. The mind constructs a self-image, a story of me, based on memories, labels, and emotions. But this self is not solid. It is impermanent and ever-changing. The fear and worry we experience are often tied to defending this illusory self. We worry about what others think of us, about our future, about our image, all to protect something that doesn't truly exist in the way we believe. When we see through the illusion of self, worry loses its foundation. If there is no solid I to defend, then there is nothing to be anxious about. This does not mean we become passive or indifferent. On the contrary, it frees us to act from wisdom rather than fear. Practical steps on this path include establishing a daily meditation practice, journaling your thought patterns, and reflecting on the impermanence of your mental states. Notice how your worries today are not the same as yesterday's. See how they arise and pass away. Begin to question them. Are they true? Are they useful? Can I simply let this go? This first path is about laying the foundation. Without understanding the nature of the mind, all other efforts are built on sand. Once the mind is seen clearly, worry begins to unravel, not because life gets easier, but because your inner lens becomes calm, steady, and awake. If you are finding insight in this path and wish to continue exploring these teachings deeply, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Your support allows us to continue sharing this ancient wisdom in a modern voice, and your journey of awakening can inspire others as well. Subscribe now and stay with us as we unfold the next path to a worry-free life. The path of letting go of attachment is the root of suffering. This is not merely a poetic phrase repeated by monks or scribbled in sacred texts. It is a deep, experiential truth at the very core of Buddhist understanding. To truly live without worry, one must confront the web of attachments that bind the mind and heart to illusions. These attachments are not only to people or possessions, but to ideas, identities, outcomes, and even pain itself. The second path from Buddhism to a worry-free life is the relentless practice of letting go. Letting go is not the same as loss. This must be deeply understood. Many fear detachment because they equate it with abandonment, with indifference, or with coldness. But Buddhist detachment is not about becoming numb. It's about becoming free. It's about seeing clearly that clinging to impermanent things leads only to inevitable pain. Everything that arises must pass away. Relationships, careers, beauty, youth, health, money, recognition. To cling is to invite suffering, because the very nature of life is change, and attachment resists change. The Buddha taught that craving, tanha, is one of the three poisons, along with aversion and ignorance. Craving is the insatiable hunger for things to be a certain way, for comfort, for certainty, for pleasure. We crave love, we crave praise, we crave success. But behind each craving is a seed of fear. The fear of not having, the fear of losing, the fear of being nothing without that thing. This is where worry is born. When the mind is clinging, it becomes restless. When it's holding tightly, it's afraid to release. And in that grip, anxiety flourishes. Consider how many of your worries come from a place of attachment. Worry about a partner leaving you. Worry about not achieving a goal. Worry about what people think. All of these stem from holding on to something you believe you need in order to be okay. But Buddhism teaches that you are already whole. You do not need anything outside yourself to complete you. The belief that something out there will satisfy the restlessness within is itself the delusion. Letting go, then, is not a passive process. It is a conscious, courageous act of releasing the mind from its own traps. It begins with awareness. First, you must notice what you are clinging to. Perhaps it's an image of yourself as successful. Perhaps it's a memory of how things used to be. Perhaps it's a fantasy of how things should be. Once you see the attachment, you begin to investigate it. What fear lies underneath it? What would happen if it disappeared? Would you still exist? Would you still be whole? These questions cut deep. The ego does not like to let go. It clings for identity, for validation, for survival. But through the lens of wisdom, you begin to see that each time you release an attachment, you do not become less. You become more spacious, more at peace. You begin to discover a truth that is difficult to accept until it is experienced. The less you need, the freer you are. This freedom is not theoretical. Imagine waking up in the morning and not needing everything to go your way to feel peace. Imagine being in a relationship without needing the other person to constantly affirm your worth. Imagine pursuing goals without being enslaved by the fear of failure. This is the fruit of non-attachment. It allows you to move through life with grace, to act without anxiety, to love without clinging, and to rest without regret. But letting go is not a one-time event. It is a path, a practice. Each day presents new opportunities to soften your grip. You may notice you're attached to a certain outcome, and so you remind yourself, I can still give my best without needing to control the result. You may feel pain when someone pulls away, and you breathe through the grief, allowing it to pass through rather than resisting it. You may find yourself obsessing over an image of yourself, and you smile gently, recognizing the mind's old habit, and return to presence. Buddhist practice offers tools for this letting go. Meditation is one of the most powerful. In meditation, you sit still and watch the mind grasp. You notice a thought arise, a worry, a fantasy, a judgment, and you let it float away like a leaf on a river. Again and again, the practice becomes one of letting go, not pushing away, not suppressing, but releasing with awareness. Over time, this becomes your natural response to life. Instead of clinging, you meet each moment with open hands. Another tool is the reflection on impermanence, anicca. This is not meant to induce despair, but to cultivate clarity. When you reflect that everything is passing, your breath, your youth, your relationships, you begin to cherish what is here without trying to possess it. You love more deeply because you do not cling. You become more grateful because you know nothing lasts. And in that awareness, worry begins to dissolve. Why worry about losing what was never yours to keep? The practice of generosity, dana, is also essential. Giving teaches the heart to let go. When you give without expecting anything in return, you train the mind to loosen its grip. You affirm abundance over scarcity, and you discover that true joy comes not from acquiring, but from releasing, from sharing, from emptying yourself into life. This counters the consumer culture that tells you happiness lies in what you own or control. Buddhism reveals the opposite. Happiness is in letting go of what owns you. To live without worry, you must become a master of surrender. Not the surrender of defeat, but the surrender of wisdom. The surrender that says, I trust the unfolding of life. I will meet each moment with openness. I will release the need to control what I cannot. This surrender is strength. It is the strength to flow with the river instead of swimming against it. It is the strength to allow change without resistance and to face loss without collapse. In the end, what we fear most is not the impermanence of things, but the impermanence of ourselves. We fear letting go because we believe we are what we cling to, but the Buddha showed another way. He showed that who you truly are is not the body, not the name, not the role, not even the thoughts. You are the awareness in which all things come and go, and when you awaken to that awareness, you become unshakable. This path is not easy. There will be times when the mind clings again, when fear arises, when loss hurts. But with practice, the habit of clinging weakens, and the habit of release grows stronger. Over time, you begin to walk lightly through the world. You love without fear, you act without expectation, and you live without worry. Not because life is perfect, but because your heart is free. If these words resonate with something deep within you, if you feel the stirrings of your own awakening and wish to continue walking this path with others who seek peace and truth, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. In doing so, you not only support the spreading of these timeless teachings, but you also join a community of seekers committed to living with clarity, compassion, and courage. Let go of the need for certainty and step into the spacious freedom of the present. Subscribe now, and let us continue this journey together. The path of embracing the present moment. To understand how to live without worry, we must understand where worry lives. Worry does not exist in the now. It lives in the imaginary future or in the shadows of the past. It is a projection, a ghost of something that is not real in this very moment. Therefore, one of the most powerful Buddhist paths to a life free from worry is the conscious and radical practice of living in the present. This is not a slogan or a superficial lifestyle trend. It is a spiritual discipline, a deep remembrance of reality, and it transforms everything. The present moment is the only reality we ever actually experience. Yet the human mind, conditioned over time by fear, habit, culture, and conditioning, spends most of its energy elsewhere. It replays old memories, regrets, traumas, and conversations. It jumps ahead to the next hour, the next day, the next decade, creating imagined scenarios, rehearsing potential outcomes, fearing things that may never come. In this constant movement, the mind abandons what is real, and when the mind leaves the now, suffering follows. The Buddha's teaching of mindfulness or sati is rooted in this very truth. Mindfulness is not just about noticing your breath or being calm. It is about returning again and again to the only thing that is true, this moment. The breath is used as an anchor, not because it is magical, but because it is always happening now. You cannot breathe in the past or the future. Every time you return to the breath, you return to reality. And when you return to reality, you return to freedom. Worry cannot survive in the present. This is not a poetic metaphor. It is a lived experience. Try this. The next time you notice yourself worrying, pause and ask, what is wrong right now? Not tomorrow, not next week, not in the imagination, but now. Usually you'll find that nothing is actually wrong in this precise moment. The body is breathing, the ground is beneath you, the heart is beating. It is only the mind that is creating stories of what might go wrong, and yet the body reacts to those stories as if they are real. This is how worry poisons the system, by deceiving you into reacting to what does not exist. To live without worry is to retrain the mind to return to now. And this training is not theoretical, it is a daily practice. Each time you notice your mind racing into the future or dragging you into the past, you gently bring it back, not with force, but with patience. You return to the breath. You feel your feet on the floor. You listen to the sounds around you. You become aware of your posture, your environment, your sensations. This is not escapism. It is awakening. You are returning to life. The present moment holds a depth that the thinking mind cannot grasp. When you drop into now, you enter a field of stillness, clarity, and even awe. Everything is alive. The simplest things, the rustling of leaves, the warmth of a cup in your hand, the movement of light, become sacred, not because they are rare, but because you are finally seeing them. Worry disappears not because you forced it away, but because it dissolves in the light of awareness. Worry is a fog that only exists in distraction. Buddhist teachings emphasize the practice of walking meditation as a way to integrate presence into movement. When you walk slowly, intentionally, noticing each step, the rhythm of your body, the contact with the earth, your awareness sharpens. You are not walking to get somewhere, you are walking to be here. This simple practice reconditions the nervous system to associate peace not with arriving at a destination, but with inhabiting the journey. And this is the essence of freedom, to find home in the now. The reason worry dominates so many lives is that people believe something better is always in the future. I'll be at peace when I solve this problem, they think. I'll feel better once I have more money, or once they love me, or once I achieve this goal. But this belief creates a permanent postponement of peace. It teaches the mind that now is never enough, and so you live in a constant chase, never truly arriving. Buddhism breaks this cycle by revealing that peace is not found in changing your life, but in fully entering it. This is not to say that we do not plan or prepare for the future. Buddhist wisdom does not promote irresponsibility or recklessness, but it distinguishes between planning and worrying. Planning is grounded, practical, and present. Worry is repetitive, imagined, and draining. When you plan, you act. When you worry, you suffer. One is rooted in mindfulness, the other in fear. To live without worry is to act when necessary and release when action is not possible, and that discernment only arises from presence. There is also deep emotional healing that comes from staying in the present. So much anxiety comes from unresolved past experiences. We carry emotional imprints, grief, shame, betrayal, that we've never fully allowed ourselves to feel. But the present moment held in mindfulness becomes a container for healing. Instead of escaping your feelings, you learn to be with them. You feel sadness without labeling it. You allow fear to rise without becoming it. You breathe through the discomfort, and slowly the wounds begin to soften. You discover that you are strong enough to feel without collapsing. Presence also reveals the impermanence of all things. Everything arises and passes. This moment will pass. This emotion will pass. This challenge will pass. But if you are not here for it, you miss the lesson, the beauty, the mystery. You become a ghost in your own life. Presence restores you to yourself. It brings you back to the only place you have power. And in that power, worry has no place to land. One of the most profound realizations on this path is that joy is always available in the present. Not because life is perfect, but because presence itself is nourishing. When you are here, really here, everything becomes enough. The wind, the silence, the breath, all of it becomes a miracle. And from this space you begin to live with a quiet gratitude, not forced, not performative, but natural. And gratitude, like presence, is incompatible with worry. To walk the path of presence is to make peace your home, not your reward. It is to practice returning again and again, from the noise of the mind to the silence of now. This is not easy. The mind will resist. It will pull you back into stories, judgments, fears. But each time you return, you are training a new way of being. You are rewiring the brain, calming the body, and awakening the soul. This is the deepest work, and it is worth everything. Letting go of worry is not about fixing the world. It is about remembering that the world is here now, and that you are alive in it, that life is not happening in your thoughts, but in your breath, your body, your senses. When you live here in this moment, you find a peace that the world cannot give and cannot take away. If this path of presence has touched something in you, if you recognize the quiet longing to live more fully, more peacefully, more awake, then I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Together we explore the sacred art of returning, of awakening, of living in truth. Subscribe now and walk with us as we continue into the next path, and may each moment become your teacher, your refuge, and your home. The path of compassion, toward yourself and all beings. To truly free yourself from worry, there is a door that must be opened, not through knowledge or control or even discipline, but through the heart. This door is compassion. The fourth path from Buddhism, to live without worry, is the path of developing and embodying boundless compassion. Toward others, yes, but most vitally, toward yourself. Until compassion fills the space where judgment once ruled, worry will always find a home. The anxious mind is a mind that has forgotten how to be kind to itself. The fearful heart is often one that has closed itself off from connection. Compassion is not softness or weakness. It is power. It is the power to remain open even in the presence of suffering. It is the energy that dissolves fear, because fear cannot survive where love is constant. The Buddha taught that all beings wish to be free from suffering. This includes you. But oddly, many people can offer compassion to others while withholding it from themselves. They forgive others, comfort others, support others, but treat their own mind and emotions with harshness, criticism, or shame. They scold themselves for not being good enough, strong enough, calm enough, enlightened enough. This inner war creates tension that fuels worry. You begin to fear your own mind. You fear feeling sad. You fear being vulnerable. You fear making mistakes. And so you live in a kind of exile from yourself. To break this cycle, you must turn compassion inward. You must learn to befriend yourself. In Buddhism, the practice of metta bhavana, or loving-kindness meditation, is a direct method for cultivating this inner compassion. It begins by offering kind wishes to yourself. May I be safe. May I be happy. May I be free from suffering. These are not affirmations meant to force a mood. They are invitations. They open space in the heart. They begin to soften the internal voice that is always pushing, always comparing, always fearing. Over time, you expand this loving kindness outward, to a loved one, to a neutral person, to someone you struggle with, and finally to all beings. But it begins with you, because if you cannot rest gently in your own presence, you will always live with a subtle fear of yourself. Worry is often the symptom of an internal atmosphere of self-harshness. You feel you must fix everything, control everything, achieve everything, in order to be worthy or safe. This perfectionism feeds anxiety. You set impossible standards. You punish yourself when you fall short. You project this tension outward, worrying about what others think, about the future, about being seen as flawed. Compassion interrupts this cycle. It whispers, "It's okay to be human. It's okay to not know. It's okay to be learning." When you speak to yourself in this way, not once but consistently, you begin to build an inner environment that is not threatening. And when the inside is peaceful, the outside loses its power to disturb you. True compassion is not sentimentality. It's not about liking everyone or pretending nothing hurts. It's about seeing clearly and still choosing to care. When someone acts with cruelty or ignorance, compassion sees that they are suffering, lost in delusion. This doesn't mean you excuse harmful behavior, but you don't feed it with hatred, because hatred only multiplies suffering. Compassion breaks that cycle. It allows you to respond instead of react, and this too lowers worry. When you carry resentment or anger, your body remains tense, your thoughts restless. But when you release others from the prison of your judgment, you free yourself as well. The energy once spent on blame or vengeance becomes available for healing. Buddhism recognizes that all beings are interconnected. What you do to others, you do to yourself. When you judge others harshly, you strengthen that voice inside your own mind. When you offer compassion outward, you reinforce the neural and energetic pathways of peace. Compassion becomes not just a feeling, but a way of seeing. You begin to see the child in every adult, the pain behind every attack, the longing behind every anger. This does not make you naive, it makes you wise, and from this wisdom you act differently. You speak with care, you forgive more quickly. You become less afraid of people, because you understand that even the ones who seem threatening are just struggling, like you. But there is an even deeper layer of this path. Compassion is not only for moments of suffering, it is a path to transcendence. As you open your heart more and more, the boundary between self and other begins to dissolve. You start to feel the shared humanity in every face, the shared breath, the shared longing to be free. This recognition shatters isolation. And isolation is the breeding ground for worry. When you feel alone, the world seems hostile. Every challenge feels heavier. Every decision feels riskier. But when you feel connected, supported, part of something larger, you relax. You trust more. You open to life. The body also responds to compassion. Studies show that practicing loving-kindness meditation reduces stress, lowers blood pressure, and increases resilience. But beyond biology, something more mysterious happens. Your energy changes. People feel safer around you. You attract softness, not through manipulation, but through vibration. And this creates an external environment that supports your internal peace. You begin to live in a field of kindness. Not because the world changed, but because you did. Self-compassion also helps you navigate failure. So much worry is about making mistakes, saying the wrong thing, choosing the wrong path, missing an opportunity. But when you treat yourself with kindness, failure becomes feedback, not identity. You learn from life without collapsing. You keep your heart open even when things don't go your way. And in this openness, you grow faster. You become wiser. You live with more courage because you know that no matter what happens, you will not abandon yourself. The practice of compassion can also extend to every part of your day. You can eat with compassion, savoring your food and thanking those who grew and prepared it. You can listen with compassion, offering your presence without interrupting or fixing. You can walk with compassion, aware of the earth beneath your feet, blessing each step. These small acts transform the ordinary into sacred moments. And sacred moments do not leave space for worry. They are too full of life. Over time, compassion becomes not just a practice, but your nature. You begin to see yourself and others as worthy of love simply because you exist. This doesn't mean you never feel pain, but it means you don't run from it. You don't fear your feelings. You don't abandon yourself when you're struggling. You become your own refuge, and from this inner sanctuary you can face anything. To walk the path of compassion is to rewrite the script that has been playing in your mind for years. It is to replace judgment with care, fear with understanding, punishment with patience. It is a revolution that begins within and radiates outward, and it is a revolution that frees you, not just from worry, but from all the inner wars that have kept you from peace. If this path has opened your heart even a little, if you feel called to continue this journey into greater compassion and freedom, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Here we explore these teachings not as ideas, but as living truths. Your presence matters, your heart matters. Let's walk this path together. Subscribe now and continue with us into the next step of awakening. The path of acceptance and surrender to what is to live without worry. One must finally come to terms with the truth that the ego resists at every turn. You are not in control. This truth, when first encountered, can feel like a threat. The ego, which has built its identity around managing, anticipating, avoiding, and controlling, does not know how to exist without effort. But Buddhism teaches that the deepest peace arises not from controlling life, but from surrendering to it. The fifth path toward a life free of worry is the path of radical acceptance of the moment, of impermanence, of change, of loss, of life as it unfolds. And this acceptance is not resignation, it is not weakness. It is the profound power of aligning your heart and mind with reality as it is, instead of fighting for how you wish it to be. Worry is the child of resistance. It arises when we reject the flow of life, when we cling to an outcome, when we refuse to accept what has already happened or fear what might come. The mind believes that by worrying, it is doing something useful. It is rehearsing, preparing, managing. But in truth, worry is a form of self-torment. It takes energy from the present and invests it in an illusion. And the more we resist what is, the more tangled we become in the suffering we are trying to avoid. Acceptance unravels that knot. Acceptance looks at life, no matter how messy, and says, this too The Buddha taught that suffering arises when we resist the impermanent nature of reality. Everything changes: the seasons, the body, relationships, fortunes, moods, thoughts, emotions. Every moment is dying and being born again. But we cling, we want this to last, that to return, this to never come. And so we suffer, not because of what is happening, but because of our refusal to allow it. The practice of surrender is the practice of bowing to what is, of saying yes, even when it hurts. Not because we enjoy the pain, but because we understand that only through saying yes can we move through it. This does not mean that we become passive or indifferent. Surrender does not mean you do not act, speak up, change what you can. It means you do so without inner war. You do not need the world to bend to your will in order to feel peace. You act with presence, with clarity, with intention, but not with attachment. The results are not yours to control. You plant seeds, but you do not force the harvest. You speak truth, but you release the need to be understood. You care, but you do not collapse when life doesn't cooperate. This is mature surrender. This is the stillness that holds the storm. One of the greatest sources of worry is uncertainty. We want to know what will happen. We want guarantees. We want the path lit before we take the step. But life does not work that way. It never has. We are walking through a forest at night, guided by instinct, intuition, and flickers of light. The attempt to control the unknown is the birthplace of endless anxiety. Buddhism invites us instead to rest in the unknown, to see it not as a threat, but as the ground of possibility. When you stop demanding that life reveal its plan, you begin to walk with greater ease. You meet each moment as it comes, and you discover that you are more capable than you imagined. Surrender also means making peace with the past. So much worry is rooted in what has already happened. We replay it, regret it, try to rewrite it in our minds, but the past is a closed door. It cannot be changed. It can only be met with compassion. Acceptance of the past means you no longer argue with it. You see it clearly. You take responsibility where needed. You offer forgiveness. You extract the wisdom and let the pain go. This is not forgetting, it is freedom. The moment you stop fighting with what cannot be undone, you recover the energy that was lost in the battle. And then there is the surrender to your own humanity, to your flaws, your fears, your confusion, your contradictions. The path to peace is not found in becoming perfect. It is found in being whole. That means welcoming every part of yourself, not just the enlightened ones. When you stop trying to be someone else, when you stop pretending to be further along than you are, when you allow yourself to be where you are, everything softens. You stop worrying about being exposed, about failing, about not being enough, because you are no longer performing. You are simply being, and being is enough. The breath becomes your companion in surrender. Every inhale says, I receive, and every exhale says, I let go. You breathe through discomfort instead of resisting it. You allow grief to move through you without rushing it. You meet fear with presence instead of panic. You do not suppress. You do not escape. You remain. You stay in the fire of the moment, and in doing so, you become fireproof. Not because you do not feel, but because you trust the flame to purify rather than destroy you. Acceptance also means allowing others to be who they are. So much worry comes from trying to manage the emotions, behaviors, and choices of other people. We want them to act differently, see us differently, love us differently. But people are who they are. Their journey is not ours to control. When you accept this, you stop wasting energy on resentment or manipulation. You begin to respond with clarity, with boundaries if needed, but without drama. You no longer take their actions as personal. You realize they are living out their own karma just as you are, and in that realization, you release the tight grip that worry had on your relationships. Surrender is not something that happens once. It is a practice. Each day brings new moments to let go. A delay, a rejection, a surprise, and in each moment you are given the choice, resist or release. When you resist, you create tension. When you release, you create space. This space is sacred. In it, you find your breath again. You find the present again. You find yourself again. And in that self, there is no worry, only awareness. Over time, surrender becomes not something you do, but something you are. You become a vessel, open to what life pours in. You become a river, flowing with what comes instead of damming the current. You stop needing to know. You stop needing to hold. You trust. And this trust is not blind. It is born of experience. You have seen that even in the hardest moments you were held. Even in confusion you learned. Even in pain you grew. So now you walk with a quiet confidence, not in your plans, but in your presence. And so the practice continues. You wake in the morning and say yes to the day, not because you know what it will bring, but because you are ready to meet it. You face challenges without collapse because you are not attached to ease. You love without possession because you trust the flow. You rest without guilt because you no longer measure your worth by productivity. You exist fully here now in alignment with life. This is the path. It is not always easy, but it is always liberating. When you stop resisting what is, you reclaim your peace. Not because everything is perfect, but because you no longer need it to be. The war is over. The battle against the moment has ended, and in its place there is silence, clarity, freedom. You have become the eye of the storm. You are no longer carried away by fear. You are anchored in truth, and in that anchoring you are free. If this path of acceptance and surrender has touched something deep in you, if you feel a shift, a loosening of the tight grip you've held so long, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Here we explore these truths not just as ideas, but as practices that change the way we breathe, love, and live. Subscribe now and continue the journey toward a life free of worry. You are not alone. The path is here and peace is waiting.